All right. Welcome, everyone. I see we've got a lot of people still joining, so welcome in. Anyone who has to leave early or can't stay, the whole time, we will have this recording sent to you afterwards. But so excited you're here for Unlocking Efficiency, how 3PL warehouses can optimize operations. So with Briefli and Extensiv and our mutual customer, Quality Distribution. So excited to have you all here. I'm going to be your moderator. My name is Martina Van Senna. I'm the Senior Manager of Partnerships here at Extensiv. But want to introduce you to who you're going to hear most from, Steve Bowen, John Berger, and Mike Adkins. So we'll start with Steve. He's the CEO of Quality Distribution. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Steve.
Great. Thank you, Martina, and welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm excited to be on here and talk a little bit about quality distribution, along with Extensiv and Briefli, who we've partnered with. A little bit about quality distribution. We're a 3PL in Salt Lake City, Utah. Beautiful place. If you've never been, please come visit. We've been in business for 30 years. We started in 1995. I like to tell people that when they say, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, we feed Utah." And so we're a 3PL that basically we have about 120 customers, and we are located near the Salt Lake International Airport. We've got 5 buildings, about 1.6 million square feet of operating facilities. We have a local trucking company and a brokerage group, and we offer solutions for about 120 customers that are located all throughout the US and worldwide. We specialize in our core focus is bulk large distribution for storage, overflow, warehousing, and distribution and transportation. And so we are very focused specifically on certified products and requirements with the food grade, retail, and then we do dabble in retail, industrial, and commercial. But we're fully certified and handle a lot of bulk product. Thousands of pallets, everything from Coca-Cola cans to Idahoan potatoes that you see at the grocery store to a lot of the medical devices that we all utilize when you go to the doctor's office. So great to be on here, and would love to talk and learn a little bit more about Extensiv and Briefli and the way that we use it here in our operation to help our customers be successful.
Thanks, Steve. John?
Yeah, I'm John Berger. I'm a solutions architect with Extensiv. My primary role is to work with our existing customers on different needs, as they find they've got new processes they need to accomplish in their warehouse. I help them find a way to make that happen, utilizing the software or whatever the need is. My background, I come from quality distribution, actually. I was the IT manager for quality for I think it was 12 years, roughly 11 years, 12 years, somewhere in that range. But worked with Steve Bowen directly, helped implement 3PL Central at the time. Now we're Extensiv, of course. Yeah, that's my background.
Thanks, John. Last but not least, Mike.
Thanks, Martina. And John and Steve, great to be with you both today. I am the head of sales here at Briefli. We're really focused on streamlining operational processes within the warehouse walls. When we look at the concept of manual data entry and the cycles needed to get that into your system, we provide a more effective and affordable way to do that. Not only improving accuracy, but speed and efficiency as well. So we got started out of my previous role at Warehouse Quote, a sister company, and managing logistics operations. We saw that when manual work was part of that workflow, things that were typically bad happened, whether that was delays or mistakes. And so out of that, Briefli was born, and really provide just another tool in that toolbox to help that operational the operations within the warehouse. So great to be on here today, and looking forward to the conversation.
Amazing. Welcome. So you guys will hear from these three lovely humans for most of the hour today. We're not going to take up the full hour with conversation. Hopefully we'll have some exciting things to highlight for you. But we will leave time for questions. So just wanted to note there is a questions tab at the bottom of your screen. Any questions that come out through the conversation, feel free to drop them in there, and I will be monitoring and I can answer along the way, or we can save them for the team at the end of the hour. So with all of that housekeeping, I'm going to start with Steve. Just share a little bit about when you became an Extensiv customer. I know it was formerly 3PL Central. John, this is a great question for you as well, just since you were part of quality at the time. What challenges were you really trying to solve for, and why did Extensiv become the solution for you?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been with quality. We've been in business 30 years. I started with quality in 2010, and so we were 15 years in the making. And when I first started, we were using a very, I like to say, a dinosaur WMS system. We were a very small company at the time, and we had 5 customer service managers that managed about 30, 40 accounts. Very rigid process, very manual with our WMS at the time. And the biggest need that we had was trying to find, as technology evolved in 2010 and beyond, we had a lot of our larger customers that were requiring much more efficiency with their ERP system. And so our manual processes were not working for us to give them inbound information, outbound information, tracking, inventory management. And so we started looking for another WMS, and we came across a couple of them. One of them at the time was 3PL. And we had a customer that required us to have EDI. And so we migrated and became a customer of 3PL Central at the time, and it was 2011. So we've been a customer ever since. And the one thing I want to share is the evolution of our company really was a driver based on many 3PLs of our customers' needs. And so as a 3PL, you're constantly trying to find, what can I do to offer a better solution for my customer? And you have, like I said, we have 120 customers. Each one of them has different needs. They require us to do different things for them. The largest customers require the top of the line automation. So we've got full automation with those customers. As you go down the list and you have a smaller, medium-sized customer, the processes become much more manual. But with Extensiv, we found way back in the day, 15 years ago, we were able to share ideas with them on what we wanted, what we needed. And at the time, 3PL was evolving and creating the solution that we needed along the way, or showing us a solution they already had that we had to adapt to. So that's kind of been our history, is really, what does the customer need? Let's find an alternative option. And we've been able to accomplish that through Extensiv for well over a decade, and continue to find many benefits with it. I will add, though, there's been many changes with WMSs. The technology may be there, but one of the problems that you have is trying to get a customer or a customer service person to adapt to those changes. One thing I do find huge value in with Extensiv, and it continues to get better, is just the simplicity of using the service and having your customer service team being able to adapt, because many don't want to change. You know, they're set in their ways. And when you bring someone new on, you need to have technology that's easy to use, manageable, that is coachable and trainable. And we've been able to accomplish a lot of that. It's been painful along the way for some, but it's just adapting to change. And Extensiv's been a great partner for us to be able to do that. Also, the customer portal. Many of our customers utilize the portal to enter their own orders, manage and view their inventory. But information is as good as what you put into it. So it's very important to have a good customer service team that manages that. And it's worked really well for us. Maybe, John, you can add a few more technical things that were a challenge back then.
Yeah, I mean, primarily for the customer that you're talking about, it was we got a brand new customer. They needed EDI in particular, and we talked to the software provider we had at the time, which was a homegrown solution out of Texas. It was kind of the old AS400. You had to kind of do all the tabbing and the F keys and everything to get around. And it was a couple of guys running it that had other full-time jobs, So basically, we went to them with the need for EDI, and they said, "Oh, yeah, we could probably make that," but we had experiences in the past where we had tried to get them to change or to add things, and in some cases, it took years and years and years, and we still didn't get a result. And so, as Steve said, we were looking around, we were trying to find a good solid solution, and we landed on 3PL Central at the time, now Extensiv, the 3PL warehouse manager in particular. So I remember when we adopted it, my first impressions were that it was just really intuitive, basically easy to use. Coming from that kind of more DOS-ish format, I feel like it was a pretty easy adoption. Sorry. But some of the other things that we ran into, we didn't have the ability to use scanners, out in the warehouse. And that was a big drive. Our owner at the time, Sita Jasper, had really pushed, we want better accuracy. We want to reduce touches. We want to make things easier. And in the warehousing space, that's really a lot of what you see is people are constantly trying to take steps out of the process. Every movement, every touch is money, basically that you're spending. And so you want to minimize what you have to do there.
Yeah, and I would just add one more thing to that. Thinking of the evolution and how it's helped us as a company, we were using not only in that system, we were housing that system in-house, and we wanted to go to the cloud. And so we did that over a decade ago, and that's been such a benefit to have everything in the cloud. Yep. Along with the cloud piece, everything, and I've had a lot of help from other Extensiv 3PLs. That's one thing I love about Extensiv is there's a really good 3PL network. We're all in the same business and we're competitors, but we're in different cities across the country. It's been really helpful to have that connectivity with other 3PLs, and many are on this call. I remember one out of Texas shared with me, hey, we put a mandate in with all of our customers that every single pallet that comes in needs to have a barcode. And I thought, how do you do that? Because we get a lot of raw ingredients, and there's no way our customers are going to do that. This last year, we implemented that same feature or that same process, and we are compliant when it comes to that. And when you have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of shipments come in, it makes things extremely efficient. And as a 3PL, you cater to the needs of the customer, and so many of them come to you for flexibility. And so you don't want to put boundaries around them. And we don't necessarily put boundaries. We just say, hey, this is how we need to do it. If you can't do it, we can do it for you, but it comes at a cost. So, we typically, if we get inbounds that don't have barcodes on them, we'll put barcodes on them and we'll charge the customer for it. So the whole goal is for accuracy, speed of efficiency, and we want to give the customer back that the fastest response so that they know when their inventory's arrived, when it's available, and not have these 24, 70, 48, 72 hour delays, because it's so important, especially with just in time or just in case. You just never know. Everything's evolved so much in the last couple of years. So for what it's worth, the evolution, those are just one of several really nice enhancements that we've seen with Extensiv.
Yeah, and to your point, Steve, opening up a new warehouse, for example, in the model that we had where we had that server that was on site on-prem, basically we then had to pay for special connections, an additional license to have another server on another site or something like that as well. And one of the things that made it really easy with Extensiv basically was the ability to just go and put up some Wi-Fi access points, take some guns over and a couple of computers and printers and just get going. The ability to get a warehouse up and running like a brand new facility was just, so much better than we had dealt with before. The other thing I wanted to point out, you mentioned barcoding and stuff. I do want to just point out barcoding is not necessarily required for the system. It does always help. It's something that you can operate if your customers know barcode. We do have some great workflows to help people with that, but it is something that definitely you want to try to drive with your customer base. And we had those situations where we sent out an email to our customers and said, hey, look, we need you to all the barcode. We had a couple of customers that we're leaving, if you make us do that. We work with them and help them see the benefit. We ended up, like Steve said, barcoding on their behalfs at some point. So, and that was a service that we're able to offer and charge for, and actually turned out to be quite a good revenue center in some cases.
You bet. One last thing I'll add, Martina, is kind of more of a current situation with us, along with the barcoding. Extensiv has really helped our business in the last couple of years evolve with ERP and API and billing. We're to a point that our efficiencies, we're doing way more with less. We're able to provide almost real-time data to our customers because of all the changes that we've been able to adapt and adjust to. But I would just say integrations have been a key to a lot of our success. We have what we call 5 levels of automation here at Quality. And so we challenge our customer service team to have really a foundation of understanding for one of your customers as an account manager, what level of automation is your customer? And some customers are fully API, full EDI. Other customers are completely manual. And so we work closely with our customers to elevate their level of automation. And it's helped us internally with our customer service people to elevate their knowledge and really focus more on the customer, the solutions they need, and gaining more business, gaining more solutions, and less administrative, less manual entry. A lot of the key components that as a 3PL can be very costly when you have to have a full-time person, basically just manually entering data all day long, which we'll get to with briefli.
Yeah. We had an account over there. You remember that account that had the individual IDs on every single box? And it took a person hours to type that in, manually. And when with Extensiv, at least, we're able to start putting that on an import sheet, putting it in. Now, briefly, I think that the big benefit we're seeing is that you could take the paperwork from the customer and get that in. But, we'll let Mike talk about that more. Well, let's deal with Center.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate that. I think one thing we always saw was it's tough to just find the silver bullet solution for everything and every customer, and it's tough to say no to revenue, especially during certain times of the year, or depending on where things are at or what's going on in the business, and so I think just some flexibility and being able to what we kind of looked at it as how can we flex operations and add more throughput, handle more business, or help our customers do that while maintaining the same resources, right? And much to Steve's kind of goals and direction there. So I think it's a difficult world, and when you look at solutions and putting all these parties together, having the information flow, and be able to ultimately do your customer right and avoid any of the risk that comes along with doing it not so right. So it's been a pleasure learning a lot more with Steve and John.
Yeah.
Awesome. Steve, I'd be interested to know just with having both of these solutions, and since you've had briefli implemented at Quality, how has efficiency changed? How have you improved overall within your team, within just the operations itself?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So, obviously all the Extensiv features and benefits have helped us dramatically. But going back about a year, we'll talk a little bit about our relationship with briefli. I've known Mike and team for well over a couple of years, and we've worked closely with them basically to share, here are some of the roadblocks that we're seeing. And we captured those by looking and kind of analyzing our daily activity of a customer service person and the type of customer that they have. And so we've analyzed the customer service person, looking at what they do each day, how much time it takes to do an inbound, how much time it takes to do an outbound. What type of inbound was it? Is it a fully automated EDI, API, or is it a manual? And so we were able to present to Briefli our overview of, here's an example of several accounts that take a lot of time to inbound product. And that was our full intent in the very beginning. And about a year ago, it's a little over a year ago, we went to Briefli and said, what can you do to help us with this data entry process that's taking almost 10 to 15 minutes for an account manager to inbound one inbound? And so Mike and team came up with a solution for us that has saved us, gone from 15 minutes to 1 minute. And it's basically many of our customers that can't afford to automate, maybe they don't have an ERP, and they send us a manual PDF where we have to key in the order. They send us the same document over and over again, day in and day out, and they have hundreds of orders, and we have to manually key those into Extensiv so that we have the inventory. What Briefli has been able to do for us is we've been able to take that similar document, take an image of it, and populate all the fields that someone would manually have to key in. And it's saved us a ton of time and allowed our team to be way more efficient, because you think about data entry and keying in orders, you make errors, and then your inventory's messed up, and then you have accuracy problems. With this scanning process and the adaptability of Briefli, we first saw a big impact with the inbounds, but what we found is other ways to utilize Briefli that we weren't even aware were going to happen, and it was on the outbound. So we'd have outbound orders that we would kick out to the warehouse, paper process or a scan process where they have to go out and pick orders. That comes back into the office and it has to be updated back into Extensiv.
Yep.
We actually found a way to use Briefli in the same form that has helped us on the inbound and the outbound, and it's made our team way more efficient. So on average, let's just take an average customer service person that maybe has 10 accounts and 3 or 4 of their accounts are very manual. We've been able to adapt and adjust and put Briefli in play, and that person now is freed up by 2 or 3 hours a day. That some people think, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with that time? Well, we want the customer service people to spend more time working with the customer, talking to the customer, focusing on what inbounds do you have? What does your forecast look like? What other solutions can we provide for you? Do we need to do inventory? What is in the forecast that we can help you with? So that's been probably the biggest advantage we've seen with Briefli right away. And of our 120 accounts, we have, over the last year, we've probably got about 40% of those customers that we utilize Briefli on. I like to say it's really a bridge between, when I say the 5 levels of automation, it's a bridge between the customer that's extremely technology savvy, that has an ERP that we've already adapted, EDI, API, to the customer that's real basic. We're trying to get our customers on board with automation, but the ones that can't get on board for various reasons, Briefli is an awesome bridge where we don't necessarily need to interrupt the customer. They can continue to do what they do. And then we found a way on the back end to speed our process up, make it more efficient for ourselves and more accurate for our customer. And it helps us too, because we don't necessarily need to charge them, tens of thousands of dollars to integrate with an ERP system that they don't have. So, but it also gets us ready for when they do evolve to that next level, because technology is changing, every single day. It's really making a big change. And that's the last thing I'd say about Briefli. Briefli is adapting to the needs that we have as this technology changes. And I really applaud Mike and team, because they listen to us. And we've told them many times, like, hey, could you do this? Could you do that? And they've been able to come up with solutions very fast. So I thank you for that, Mike. It's really helped our business and our customers, which is really, that's what matters the most. So it's going really well.
Yeah, and as an Extensiv employee, working with many of our customers, I've really heard the same thing. We've got to do all this data entry. How do we get it better? Our customer says they're going to do EDI, but it's X number of months, years out before they're going to do it. And I think, Steve, we even had a customer that they had an ERP, they had an entire programming staff, and we begged and pleaded to try to get them to connect with us, through the methods that Extensiv has. And that customer's IT department was just so rigid, they didn't want to set up any connections. And so briefli, I think, is being employed, for that customer in particular to help bridge that gap, even though the technology is possible. It's just that customer's not willing to do it. So absolutely, this was a great solution to help solve that problem. And like I said, many of the other customers that I talk to on a regular basis, it's the same pain. We've got this paper drives the process. This packet of paper comes in from a truck at the dock window, gets handed off to a forklift driver. It's floating around on that forklift, while that forklift driver is doing the work. If that gets lost, what happens? It's lost. How do we know where that shipment is now? Maybe it got put away. Maybe the paperwork fell off the forklift at that point. Never makes it back to the office. That inbound shipment doesn't get closed. That's a huge problem. One, you're missing revenue because you didn't, get that stuff into stock on time. But more importantly, that's reputation with your customer.
Yeah.
We don't find that problem in a timely manner, and they're coming to us and saying, "Hey, we show that was delivered." A lot of egg on your face at that point. So certainly taking the paperwork immediately, using something like briefli, and using briefli specifically to get that into the system, and then be able to have that. Not only does it let you capture the data and kind of intelligently point you to where it needs to go, but it also, let's say you need to build a SKU on the fly, it can actually build that SKU into the system for you. There's some suggestions there that I'll help you with. And that paperwork, we talked about what to do with that paperwork. One problem I remember at Quality in the early days was, we had these filing cabinets everywhere full of paperwork, and then once a quarter or something like that, we're taking those, we're putting them in those, little file boxes, putting them on pallets and storing them someplace in the warehouse, and really this type of a solution takes all of that away.
Yes.
One of the things that's really cool is not only does that document get scanned and everything, but it can get attached, into the transaction as well. So when you think about, in terms of paperwork, you hold on to that because maybe the customer has a claim, maybe there's a problem, something like that. You need to go look that up. As you can imagine, filing cabinets, I got to rifle through. Out in the warehouse, I got to go find those boxes. It's a lot of work. If it's stored in the system attached to the transaction, all I have to do is go plug in a reference number from the customer or a transaction number, go to the attachments, it's right there, So you save a ton of time and you have your backing, which is the important part.
Yeah, John, I want to touch on two things that you mentioned that I think will be really helpful for many of the 3PLs that are on the call. Number one, you just mentioned the customers that are coming to you as a 3PL that are medium size and they don't have the infrastructure to be fully ERP integrated. Maybe they use a very basic inventory management system and they send you orders via PDF or an email. I mean, it could be as simple as, hey, or they call you. One of the things I really like about briefli that has been really helpful, many of these customers, they're not willing to make that change. It's not that they're not willing, they can't afford to make that change oftentimes. Briefli allows us to be able to adapt to it. And I think we're also in a situation where even the bigger guys that have the ERPs and they have the technology, like you mentioned that one customer we had, they may not look at you as a 3PL as someone that they're going to invest in integration with. So they're just going to say, hey, you know what? You're a fraction of our business. We're not going to spend 6 to 8 weeks to integrate. We're not going to spend the 20 grand. So this is a way for us to still, as a 3PL, adapt to what they need. And that's been very helpful. The other question or answer I want to give is account manager likability. So I'll just share with the fellow 3PLs on here. When we integrated briefli, we started to watch our customer service people, our account managers that are managing these accounts. You have buy-in, right? You have account managers, customer service people that are used to using their process every single day. They have some customers that they're just watching the orders go through because they're fully automated, others that they're manually entering information. When they see Briefli, the feedback that I've gotten from our 15 customer service people has been phenomenal. They're very happy with the results and they're willing to make the change. They're a little reserved at first, but once they see how simple it is to take that data and basically utilize Briefli to automate the process, they start to really evolve with their own train of thought and realize, man, this is going to take me a lot less time. And I like that I scan it in and then I go right into the system and it's all uploaded to Extensiv. I verify that it's correct. I throw the paper away because it's the scanned documents already loaded in Extensiv and on Briefli. So it's been really cool. I mean, it's, we want to provide our team with resources that help them be productive, and they want, so they enjoy their job too. So it is neat to see that evolution. And Mike, I'm sure you could probably speak more to it, but those are just a few of the features that I've found very helpful for us.
I'm glad your team likes it because they provided all the feedback, much of the feedback so far. So, I think, but I think that's how we do look at the problem is through the lens of a warehouse operator. We've managed that type of business before and understand some of the challenges. So I think we do have that perspective a bit when we're looking at the problem. But I'll say that Extensiv as a WMS partner and its extensibility and willingness to share technical information and make sure you have what you need in order to be successful, was incredibly important to our success on getting, something that could be operational very quick, or making some of these changes, and adapting to some of the challenges as they come out of the business with Steve and his team and Steve's team's feedback on and Parker and April and all the rest really provided the context of what we call our click to configure interface. So it's all visual, and we it's managed by the CSR team. I'm not sure your IT folks are stepping into Briefli much, and that's the idea is to provide those doing the work with the tools in order to accomplish what they need to and focus on things we need, human beings and brains and people that have knowledge around accounts to go tackle, rather than stare at a screen and punch in characters on keyboard. So it's been a great experience seeing it grow to 40 I think ish accounts right now active, where you're manually processing these every day and see the evolution of it.
Absolutely.
Steve, we're always trying to do more with less, right? Trying to improve automation and make sure that we've got anything running as efficiently as we can. Have you ever encountered a situation where you've maybe removed a step from a process or, automated something that ended up you had to put it back the way it was? Or have you always had success with kind of finding those streamlined solutions with these tools, or any other example you have at the warehouse?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of potential scenarios with that question. I look at it though, for example, with Extensiv will come up with multiple, because you've got so many customers at Extensiv that have different needs, different demands, whether it be e-com, B2B, retail, whatever it may be. So we've seen a lot of scenarios where there's solutions out there that Extensiv has, we don't know about them, or we haven't had a need for them. And then we find out about them. We try to adapt to whatever that solution is. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But what we learned from it, and that has happened, even with the evolution of Extensiv moving platforms a couple years back, like Billing Manager, there's been areas where you have to change and adapt, and maybe things aren't completely the way that you operate, and you have to change the way you operate in order for that tool to work. That's probably the biggest challenge that I've seen within our operation, because especially when you're billing, that's a big factor. Yeah. What I think is the key here that, Martina, is having really good dialogue with between our customer service, our IT department and Extensiv's IT department, and the same for Briefli. Like, we've got to be on the same page. We have to communicate, and before we move forward with something, we got to make sure it works, because it's too costly, it's too important, and that's why our partnership is so vital, and that's why we've been partners for so long. But there's been times along the way where you say, Extensiv will say, hey, we're gonna put this to rest and we're gonna move on to this new technology, and we're like, whoa, hold on, like, we've built our whole infrastructure on this platform. And I say some people aren't ready for change. Well, sometimes change can't happen until you are ready. And so we've worked through it, but it does happen, and that's one thing I'm really just pleased with our partnership. We haven't necessarily had that with Briefli. I think there's a couple scenarios. I think the answer would be, there's scenarios where we think the solution is the same for one customer, that works for one customer, it'll work for another. We try it and we go, no, it didn't work for that customer, and it's because maybe their data is a little bit different. And then we have to go back to Briefli and say, hey, Briefli, this one's different, and they have to go in and make some tweaks, and then they come back and fix it, and then it does work. So, I mean, it's a good question, and there is, like, I think the answer is, we just have to be willing to work with one another. And sometimes if it doesn't work, then okay, we just throw that one away and move on to something else. But in general, it usually does, if we have good communication and work together to make it happen.
Well, I think
that. So go ahead, John.
Oh no, you're okay.
I think part of that, like, it's really tough to control the information that's coming into you, right? So I think, in the same problem with AP invoicing, right? Like everybody's stuff is just a little bit different, and it doesn't necessarily lend itself well to, traditional processing. So, I think we see an additional use case every now and then. And, the great thing about some of these technologies these days is that as you start to iterate and add those use cases and those variations, those just kind of become part of the brain, looking at the document and getting that information to Extensiv. So again, that feedback's been great, and understanding some of those like unique use cases that I'm sure everybody's pulling their hair out handling today, with just weird looking documents and information that's all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Except John. Sorry, John.
I say it happened already, but
I mean to throw a grenade there, man. Yeah.
I got here with data entry, right?
yeah, that's right.
So no, I was just going to comment on the change factor. Basically, is there were some changes we went through, and I think generally what we found was we were able to give that feedback, and ultimately those changes benefited us, at the end of the day. And same thing with Briefli. And I've had opportunities to talk to Mike and team and about different ideas and different things that I've noticed in talking to our customers, and their team is very receptive to basically those ideas and that feedback from our other customers as well.
From a change perspective, it's always hard, right? And when it comes to implementing new technologies, I imagine at the warehouse, Steve, that's going to impact so many processes and so many people every time we implement a new piece of technology. But looking towards the future, and question for all three of you, honestly, is like, where do you see the biggest opportunities for 3PLs to leverage new technology in the next 3 to 5 years? There's a lot of trends, there's a lot of things going around, but what is worth the change in your opinion, and how do we leverage that new technology?
Yeah, I'll start with a couple things. The big keyword is AI, and we're all wondering, how's that going to work in our operation. We've got our own in-house chat GPT, and we've adapted and tried to figure out ways that we can utilize it, and take data and throw it into chat GPT and have it extract certain data back. We're not seeing the next level of what that can do for us yet, but we know it's out there, and I think everyone in the world is trying to figure that out. We're seeing some different ways for it to work. One thing I would say on the future evolution is, for us, is it's our 5 levels of automation. And we're very focused on that. And I know a lot of 3PLs are kind of in the same boat. Some 3PLs say, hey, when you come to us, this is what's required. And you have to have full integration. Like if you go to Amazon, if you're a customer and you're going to sell through Amazon, Amazon says these are the requirements and you have to adapt to those. As a 3PL, smaller 3PL in a market, obviously you need to be flexible. And so for us, I see us utilizing technology like Briefli to further automate. So one example that we're doing this year is we're utilizing one of Extensiv's technology partners for all of our inbound appointment setting procedures. So we have over 450 dock doors between all 5 of our warehouses, and we have scheduled trucks that come in, and we're really pushing advanced shipping notification, ASNs, because you know, believe it or not, trucks pull in here every single day. I'm looking out the window, there's trucks driving by every day. 80% of them come in with an appointment and they know what they're here for and we know what's on that truck. But what about the other 20%? We want to get to 100%. We want to know what's coming when it ships. And I think that's the biggest opportunity is there are so many different vendors out there that, you know, need to understand your procedures, your process at the time they ship the product to you. But it's hard when you get to the smaller customers, because they're buying from smaller vendors that don't have the technology. So from my perspective, from a 3PL operation, we're really pushing the knowledge of what's coming in, when it's going to be here, so that we can do some pre-planning and be ahead of the game and be as efficient as some of the very large 3PLs out there. And we're seeing some progress with that. What
John,
about you?
Any thoughts?
When it comes to AI in particular, you mentioned definitely really, what's that?
Oh. Just any technology. Yeah, but AI for sure.
Yeah, I think the thing it's doing for us is really, making it easier to access information, get it a way that's more digestible, easier to see so that we can make better decisions. But yeah, technology changes. I agree with a lot of what Stu said. I think that it's something that pushes us to a new level.
Awesome. Well, we have a number of questions for you guys, so I want to get to that. But before we wanted to just give you all the chance for kind of last final thoughts, anything that you wanted to share that we didn't get to in our conversation on just general efficiency optimization at the warehouse.
Yeah, I would just say, I know there's a lot of fellow 3PLs on the call, and we're located in Salt Lake and we've been in business a long time. And, I love having the network of the other Extensiv customers. And we've learned we gain a lot from one another. And this is a great example of it. There's a lot of things that each one of us deal with each day, stuff that you may never experience until you do. And that's one thing that I really like about this partnership with Extensiv. Extensiv has been a great resource for us. And as I have told the Extensiv team, we are so reliant and dependent on this partnership because it's the backbone of our inventory management of each of our warehouses and the technology that we have, that it's a very important partnership, and it helps us to be successful, especially with the full integration with many of our customers that count on that data every single day, and when something breaks, you hear about it. So we've had a wonderful experience with the partnership, and I appreciate it greatly, for everyone from Extensiv that's on the call. You guys are a very important partner for us, and same with Briefli. We are successful for a lot of the things that we do, but our partners are part of that success. So I just want to say thank you for having our back when it comes to the great technology, the support, and most of all, the communication. There's nothing worse than when you need, something breaks and you need to call and have somebody there to help fix it. And we've had a wonderful experience along the way. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's dive into some questions. We've got quite a few for you, Steve. And anyone, if we do not get to your question today, we will follow up and answer. I'll share these with the team afterwards and make sure to connect you. I know Mike was answering some of the questions in the chat regarding to briefly, but start with one, going back to kind of our beginning of our conversation, Steve. Joe Bridgman wants to know, how have you found and continue to maintain the connections with other extensive 3PLs? You mentioned our community, our network, and how are you doing that today?
Yeah, so we've attended the Extensiv conferences the last couple of years. We're on the 3PL network under Extensiv's website foundation, where we have had many 3PLs reach out to us, on the Extensiv website, sharing opportunities. For example, we're in the Intermountain West. We're in the crossroads of the West here in Salt Lake City. And so we have a lot of customers that need business. They need a network on the East Coast. And so we've had scenarios where we've been able to share opportunities with 3PLs on the East Coast where our customers need activity out that direction, and vice versa. But a lot of that has just been through over time. We've had leads come to us with new customers that are coming to Extensiv that have reached out and said, tell me what you think of the software, and can we get a real live person that's using it and how it works. So the networking's been really good. I would say that the Extensiv conferences have been priceless. They've really helped us. I've met more Extensiv customers through that network, also on the customer advisory board. And I encourage Extensiv to continue to do things like that, because although we're all competitors, many cases we're so far between one another, we're never really going to compete. And it's great when you can reach out to another fellow 3PL and say, hey, what does your scenario look like? Have you ever dealt with this? And talk to somebody that can actually, is willing to talk to you and tell you about what they're dealing with, and you may have already dealt with it and come up with a good solution. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, kind of on that topic too, there's a couple questions on a few people with startup 3PLs. They're just a couple months into business, or kind of the first task at looking at streamlining and automating. What advice would you give to folks in those positions?
I would say get with Extensiv and obviously go through the demo and move forward with it. But for us, it's the simplicity of using the service. It's very user friendly. We use it soup to nuts, from everything from the very beginning inbound all the way to the billing process, fully integration with all of our billing, all of our inbounds, outbounds, inventory management. Our quality assurance team uses it for certain things. We've even got our maintenance team using it for certain things, because we use Extensiv for in-house inventory. So, for the startups out there, and we don't do a lot of e-com. I know there's a lot of businesses probably on the call that do a lot of e-com. We have worked closely with Extensiv on the e-com that we do handle, and Extensiv is extremely good at e-com. I know I've talked to many of the other 3PLs out there that use it 100%. I was down in Dallas visiting with one of our friendly competitors that uses Extensiv, and I was impressed with their operation. They, do 1,000, 10,000 shipments a day, all e-com, all through Extensiv. So, startup or, just a smaller 3PL, very good company to work with. And I would highly recommend it.
Question for this may be good for Mike as well. The question is to you, Steve, just elaborating on specific processes internally that you briefly helped with outside of inbounds or receipts, and would love to hear from you too, Mike, on that.
Yeah. I think if I could answer, and there, many 3PLs, if you have a process that your customer's not willing to change and it requires you to do data entry, I would be on the phone with Briefly to explain what that situation is and let them show you the solution, because that's what we did. That's the simplest way I can say it. Mike, you may have a different opinion, but We started with the inbound, and then, like I told you earlier in the webinar, we found that the outbound was even more rewarding for us, and we didn't intend on that in the beginning. So I would just encourage anyone, reach out to Mike and team, let them know what your data entry processes are, and I'm sure they can come up with a solution. I hope I didn't, speak for you and on that behalf, Mike, and commit to you, but what are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think you committed anything we're not normally committed to. I think, we're committed to going in and closing gaps in our customers' business. So whatever that may be, I would say the primary use cases today are around either inbound or outbound activity, just in the nature of kind of where our customers have wanted to attack, their manual data entry. But we have loosely discussed some situations around invoice, AP invoicing, AR invoicing, or managing that cycle as well. We've got a example of inventory adjustments that, manual stock sheet that you might go in and write all the actuals on next to it. Our platform is very good at reading handwritten data too. So anything that can be done in bulk, we can batch operate as well. So we're continuing to look for use cases. So we welcome any conversation and prioritize that accordingly.
I would add, we have some of our customers, like I said, we have 120 customers. Some of our customers we're already seeing, because we get to know our customers so well, we see they use a lot of different 3PLs. They've even asked us, hey, we've noticed, and we're pretty transparent with them. We've talked to them about briefly. We're seeing opportunities with some of our customers that use other 3PLs that we're trying to tie in just a resource to say, hey, you may want to have briefly talk with your other 3PL as well, because they're having problems with the other 3PL on accuracy, on the time it takes to do an inbound. And those are all areas where briefly can speed that process up. So it may be a scenario like that. That's why I encourage every 3PL, take a look at it, because it is a bridge. And some might wonder, well, can't Extensiv do this already? Well, Extensiv is the foundation. Extensiv is the backbone. It does all the WMS work. The manual entry piece is that piece between you and your customer that's not willing to automate yet. Briefly is the bridge that gaps that piece, and it really has helped us. In fact, I'm going to really encourage my team to help our customers even more, because I think there's some solutions we can offer through briefly to them, if that helps.
Yeah, and we do have several different ways to input. Obviously there are import templates, there are EDI options, there's API. We have a REST API, of course, and then we do have our integration manager piece that allows connectivity to shopping carts and stuff like that. So obviously, import sheets, the downside is, you have to sit there and prep them and get the data into them, and that's where briefly really comes into play to fill that gap. Ultimately, and ideally, at some point, it would be nice to get to a point where you're able to connect electronically, because then this stuff just appears in the system, and you're ready to work it. So, but yeah, until then, briefly is obviously the way to go. They're going to make that gap easier. And even if you're in transition right now, I've had a couple of customers I've talked to that are working on EDI projects. And sometimes these EDI projects can take months, to get done. And they're like, oh man, this is killing us. Can we get it done any faster? And a lot of times we're waiting on the other party, to finish that up. And so the conversation has been, hey, let's introduce you to Briefly. At least we can take some of that pressure off your team of that data entry piece, while that's ramping up. And Mike's service is a great service where it's a pay for use, service, and you're not necessarily locked into a crazy contract or something like that.
I'm glad you brought that up.
We've actually got some customers using it ahead of an EDI timeline. We all know that those can take 8, 12 weeks or whatever parties are involved. So, if you really want to get cranking on a account with any volume, we've seen Briefly in place as an interim, and they just, when things are validated on the EDI side, they just turn it down. So again, flexibility is the name of the game, I think, and talking to Steve and what he wants. So that's the direction we've gone.
Yeah, we actually did that. We had a customer that came on new to us, and they wanted to start with EDI, and it was going to be 8 to 12 weeks, and it actually turned into more than that because you guys have all know, we need to spend 2 or 3 weeks trying to figure out the scope, and then the 8 to 12 weeks starts. We had that happen, and our customer was just freaking out because they had their product is so valuable and so important to have that up-to-date information. We went to Briefli and said, look, they can give us this information. And Briefli said, no problem. We can extract that, upload it, and we can provide the customer with the updated information until EDI is set up. And it was a game changer. And Parker, who handles a lot of our integrations, he was just all smiles because the customer, I mean, they're frustrated. They don't understand oftentimes, why does it take 2-3 months to get EDI going? Yeah. I think all of us wonder why it takes that long, but it does. It's just a lot of work to try to connect every piece. So,
well, and we've seen that when I was an employee of quality, we saw that across multiple different systems, so it's everywhere out there. You work with SPS Commerce, you work with True Commerce, you work with all these different EDI providers, and EDI takes time. People get into lines and get backlogged. And so you're going to need that duct tape, to basically cover that gap. But the other thing too is that's not your only customer, right? You've got 25, you've got 50, you got 150 different customers. You're going to have data entry someplace, and so there are plenty of opportunities there where Mike and team with Briefli can help you fill that gap.
All right, we have time for one more question. And since it touches on everything, I think it makes sense to end on. But how can using Extensiv and Briefli, question for us all to probably touch on, help with going paperless in a warehouse? And what does that look like?
Yeah, who wants to take that?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, just from like a capabilities set. There's a couple things. So one, in terms of those orders, you're not electronically being delivered today. We capture that document when it comes in, and so you can set up an inbox to go directly to Briefli, et cetera, and that's essentially your collection point for that document coming in. So it's been converted to its digital state at that piece. Our platform processes that document for QA. And then we send the information to update the order or create the order, depending on what's going on, if it's a blind receipt, for example. And finally, we provide the ability to attach that document to the WMS transaction. So you do have that piece sitting there. So after that document is captured, there's really no reason to keep that. And it's really following your records management for whatever's in your, Extensiv database and et cetera. We also provide the ability to drop those files into SharePoint or an SFTP, depending on what your document strategy is. So, at the point we're processing that information, we can also encourage or promote that storage and management of that document thereafter, so it can digitally be found, searched, or disposed of.
Well, and I'll speak to the Extensiv process there is, so let's say a blind receipt, for example, you take, photographs of that document that came in, the bill of lading, the packing slip, anything that's important right there, it gets into the system right away. Well, then let's say you have a customer service person that is normally going to do data entry. They can take that, process that through the Briefli application, get it into the system quickly, and then you're able to position yourself into what we call a receive against ASN or advanced ship notice situation in the system, where now I'm out there with a scan gun operating, not a clipboard and a piece of paper, handwriting everything. And really I'm able to do something where, Steve mentions labels. Well, there's movable unit or pallet labels, license plates, all the same concept there. I can get those onto those pallets really quick. I can do a scan, do a quick verify, and then it's a scan to put away, so that entire inbound process becomes a lot faster. Not only that, because Briefli and team have basically uploaded that document into the WMS and attached it to that transaction, we have the customer notifies feature that some of you may have seen, where as soon as that transaction gets closed, all of those documents can automatically flow to your customer. And so there's nobody out in the warehouse taking pictures with a camera, sending them to somebody else, taking those pictures and attaching them to an email, having that email fail because you put too many pictures in the email, and then having to go back and try it again, right? So all of those things can be optimized and made more efficient, kind of between the two different operations here.
And I agree with what they both said, because we're doing that and it's a game changer. So good job.
Yeah, and on the order side, to speak to paperless again. So on the order side, what do you have? You're going to print a pick ticket, right? You got to send that pick ticket out. You've got to, basically have somebody go around if you're not using a scan gun. Now, obviously with scan gun, we can turn around and try to eliminate that paper. So if you really want to go paperless, it's, are we using mobile out in the warehouse, realistically? You talk in terms of a bill of lading. Well, I need to take a bill of lading. I need to have that bill of lading signed by that driver. Well, I'm going to take a picture of that, get that into the system. Maybe there's something I need to capture, I can work with Briefli on. So there are different options, there as well.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I know we're right at time. Don't want to keep you all past the hour. So appreciate you joining. You'll be getting a lot of detail, the recording of this, and any questions that weren't answered live, we will be following up with you. So don't think that we missed you. We tried to get it to as many as we could. But thank you, Steve, Mike, and John. Appreciate your insights today. Really helped to have your expertise. And everyone, please reach out. You'll get contact information for how to get in touch with us, with these folks, in our follow-up. So look out for that. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see.
Thank you. Bye.